All right, so check it. We got a special one here. We're upgrading the entire rig to the latest and greatest of 2020. We're gonna do a whole CPU change. We're gonna do a whole motherboard change. We're gonna keep the 3090 Strix because that's the latest and greatest. But pretty much we're gonna strip out the heart of the PC and we're gonna upgrade it. There's a specific process that you should go through if you're changing the CPU and if you're changing the motherboard. So before we dive into it, we're gonna go through all the steps in changing your entire rig. We're upgrading the CPU to the AMD Ryzen 9 5950X. And then we're also doing a motherboard upgrade because you know we can't have a 5950X on the current TRX 40 motherboard. So without further ado, we're gonna go through all the proper steps when changing a CPU and a motherboard. Because unfortunately, it's just not as easy as swapping the CPU and the motherboard. So step number one, we're gonna do a system wipe. So it's pretty easy. We're gonna wipe off everything from the PC, which means we're gonna wipe off all the memory because you don't want any conflicting software once you install your brand new motherboard. Okay, so to start the entire reset process, you're gonna wanna click on the Windows menu button, type in reset. You'll get this option for reset this PC. Click on that. And then you're gonna wanna click on reset this PC, get started. And over here, you can click on either of these two options. I'd suggest going with remove everything, that way you get a fresh start. And if you're gonna go with this option, you're gonna want to go ahead and transfer all your important files onto a thumb drive or an external hard drive. So you click on remove everything, and then you're gonna wanna click on local reinstall. You click on next, and that's it. All right, so step number two, once you've completed doing a system reset, we can begin taking all the old components out and swapping it out for the new ones. All right, so I'm gonna start by taking the glass panel off. And of course, turn off your system. We're gonna first start off by disconnecting the power cables from the GPU. And we'll bring out the handy dandy tools. Over here, I have a electronic screwdriver, which is a great tool for all the PC builders. It really just saves a lot of time, pretty strong, has a light on it, and it just makes the job easier. And a link to this will be in the description box below if you guys want to pick this up. Great tool. All right, so we'll continue by loosening the brackets to the GPU, and then you want to release the retention bracket for the PCIe slot. We're gonna loosen the fan. And I'm not gonna take off everything because I can take the motherboard out without taking the exhaust fan off. So all I'm doing right now is just taking off all the connectors on the motherboard, nothing fancy. So the next thing you wanna do is you wanna take off the CPU block. There you are. And what you're gonna wanna do is wipe off all the thermal paste from the CPU block first. And the way I like taking it off is taking a little bounty tissue and rubbing alcohol, and it just wipes right off. Dab it on. We've wiped that off. Now the next thing you want to do is you want to take off the motherboard. So for me, there's about 7 screws holding the motherboard onto the case frame. And of course, always make sure you have your screws organized. And now you should be able to take the motherboard off. And of course, you want to make sure you have the box ready. That way you can just rest the motherboard on top of the box. Just gonna place this guy right here. So I'm going to remove the RAM sticks, and then I'm going to remove all the SSDs. Just like that, we have the first stick, we have the second stick. And of course, before you remove the CPU, you want to clean the thermal paste off. Dab some alcohol. And as you can see, we have the Ryzen Threadripper 3960X over here. We're gonna remove that, and then we're gonna use a Torx screw that came with the Threadripper. And it should pop right open. And then you wanna make sure you have the casing for the CPU. And then you're gonna wanna cover up the pins of the motherboard. And we can pack this all up. Just like that. we're done with the TRX 40 MSI Creator motherboard. And then next we have the Asus ROG Crosshair 8 Formula motherboard. And I just love the way Asus packages their motherboards. Then you have an anti-static bag, so we're gonna place it right on top of the anti-static bag. Okay, so here we have the new motherboard. First things first, we're gonna install M.2 SSDs that we have sitting right over here. So we'll take our handy dandy motorized screwdriver. So there we have it. We just installed the M.2 SSDs, as you can see right here and right here. We're just gonna put the cover back on. We're gonna take off the film off the thermal pads. So the NVMe SSD sticks are installed. We're gonna install the CPU right now. So here we have the Ryzen 9 5950X. It is finally installed, as you can see. And then the next thing you wanna do is you wanna install all the RAM sticks. So for me, I'm installing all 4 RAM sticks. If you're installing 2 only or 1, you wanna read the motherboard manual because there's an order that you should install your RAM stick in. So you just can't install it in any slot that you please. So since I'm installing all 4, the order doesn't matter for me. And each time you install it in, you wanna hear a click. So now that everything's installed, you wanna screw the motherboard back onto the frame. All right, so the next thing we have to do is we have to change the retention brackets on the CPU because these brackets over here, they're meant for the TRX 40 motherboard. And over here we have a X570 motherboard, so we have to change these brackets. All right, so the camera died, but we're back. We're gonna reinstall the fan onto the case. The next thing you have to do is apply thermal paste. So I'm using a thermal paste I picked up from Amazon, works really good. And it comes with a little spatula. All you wanna do is pretty much do a little dab on there, a little straight line, spread it with the spatula. I like to make sure it's evenly spread out, and I really love this brand because this brand comes with a little spreader. And the reason why I did this at the last point was because you don't want the thermal paste to dry up and just sit there for too long. So now I'm just gonna put the AIO cooler on. And all you need to do is pretty much hand tighten for the most part. And then if you wanna go back with the screw, just do a quick, easy turn just to make sure it's on there. And I always like to clean as we go, just so we don't create a mess. I'm gonna get my handy dandy headlight. All right, so I think we're just about done. I'm connecting all the connectors on the motherboard. So that's how the GPU looks installed vertically. So I'm gonna turn it on. So we've got some light, we got the screen OLED turning on. So that's good news, everything is turning on. All right, now I'm gonna connect the display port cable to see if we get any display. All right, so check it out. We finally finished this entire build. So everything booted up fine. We just went through the basic Windows setup procedure. Nothing to show there. That pretty much just consisted of just setting up the time, the date, things like that, which took about 2 to 3 minutes. So there are some things that you guys may want to take a note of. So if your PC is not booting up when you change your motherboard and CPU, a simple BIOS update most likely will fix your problem. Because what happens is once the motherboards are manufactured, they're updated with the latest BIOS at that time. So there's a lot of time that passes once these motherboards hit the store or just sitting in a warehouse. There are constant updates happening. So just to be up to date, always update your BIOS once you receive it. Now, if it's still not booting up, just make sure all your connectors are connected properly. I once had an issue where it took me about an hour or 2 just to figure out that my 24-pin motherboard connector was not seated properly. It just didn't boot up for whatever reason. So I just took off the power cables, I took off the motherboard 24-pin cable, reseated them, then fortunately it finally booted up. I'm gonna go through some performance numbers with you guys. So I've done some 3D Mark benchmark testing with the AMD Threadripper 3960X, and then I also done some 3D benchmark testing with the AMD Ryzen 9 5950X, just to see if I'm getting an overall performance boost or if I'm just downgrading. So to my surprise, I'm gonna show you guys what the results look like and take a look at it. So as you guys just saw, the AMD Ryzen 9 5950X actually performed much better than the Threadripper 3960X. It kind of blew my mind away because hardware-wise, the Threadripper 3960X, it had more cores and more threads. So for the 5950X to actually perform better at a lower price point, that was just mind-boggling, and it just made my day. I'm super happy with the build now. And to put it into perspective, I've saved about $1,300 just from going from the Threadripper to the 5950X. So not only is my system performing better, but I saved a bunch of money. So to quickly go over the price points, the AMD Threadripper 3960X costs about $1,400, whereas the AMD Ryzen 9 5950X only costs about $800. And I say only because I'm comparing it to what I used to have versus what I'm using right now. I know $800 is a lot for a CPU, but I wanted a beast of a PC, so I think $800 is much better than $1,400. So right there alone, I save about $600. Now the motherboard. So I picked up the best and most popular motherboard for the AMD Threadripper 3960X, which was the ASUS Zenith 2 Extreme Alpha motherboard, and that cost about $820, whereas the best motherboard for the 5950X was the ASUS Crosshair 8 Formula X570 motherboard, and this thing cost about $570. So right there alone, I saved another $250. So far we're at $850 in savings. And then lastly, RAM. So for the Threadripper system, I was using 64 gigs of RAM. And the reason I was able to use 64 gigs of RAM was because the motherboard for the Threadripper is using the TRX 40 platform. And on that platform, you're able to use 8 RAM slots. I'm only able to use 4 RAM slots for the X570 motherboard. So I'm only using 32 gigs of RAM. So altogether, I was using 64 gigs of RAM before, which cost me about $900, whereas I'm only using 32 gigs of RAM right now. So you cut that $900 in half, I save another $450. So altogether, we have $600 plus $250, which is $850, plus another $450, which comes to $1,300 worth of savings. And I'm getting a better performing PC. Also, we still have the PS5 giveaway going on right now. Guys, we're almost at the 1,000 mark, so we're very close. I will be doing another giveaway when we hit that 1,000 mark before we do the big PS5 giveaway at 1,500 subs. So I'll leave a link to it in the top left-hand corner of this video, as well as the description box below. With all that being said, if you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Drop a like if this video helped or inspired you guys, and subscribe if you guys enjoyed the content. I'll see you in the next one.